This is the Marketing Boss Podcast, where today's top marketing professionals reveal their best tips, tools, and strategies, and we all become better leaders because of it. And here's your host, video marketing expert, Erik Harbison.
Hey guys, it is another great episode of the Marketing Boss Podcast, which is brought to you by Fresh Level Video Marketing Agency. I am your host, Erik Harbison. I want to thank you guys for being with me today. Today we are talking about all things email marketing, well, at least the things that you didn't know. So I'm excited, you guys. I'm honored, thrilled to have a guest on the show today, the Chief Marketing Officer at aWeber. His name is Erik Harbison. And I'm so excited, just to give you guys a little bit about Erik. He has succeeded in roles as an independent contributor and VP C-level manager of both small and large teams. He loves to teach and educate, which he's going to do with us here today. He blends his passion for teaching and marketing as a guest instructor for a number of colleges. So, talking Drexel University for new media marketing and also at the University of Vermont. So this guy has a lot to share with us, and it's going to be really, really, really great. He's also contributing for Huffington Post and Technology Advice. So, Erik, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, Parshell, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, also, before I forget, I want to invite you guys who haven't connected so far on social media. You can find me, Parshell Houghton, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Also, be sure to join our private LinkedIn group. It's called the Marketing Boss Club. So that's where other marketing professionals and business owners like you and me can collaborate and grow together. Again, the Marketing Boss Club on LinkedIn. Come on and join the group. So let's jump in with Erik. I'm so excited. When it comes to email, I know that it's good and bad, right? It has its
right.
Has its good and its bad, But yeah, let's just start. Give us some context. How did you get into this role in marketing? I love asking this question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I guess I'm one of those people that, I knew I wanted to be in marketing since I was 6 years old. And that started when I was in church, just trying to distract my brothers by drawing ads on paper, and knew that I always wanted to do stuff to get the attention of other people. And that led me went away to college, got a degree in advertising, my first job was in media buying. So, right out of the gate, I was connected to advertising and marketing. And then I jumped on the internet wagon probably around 97, 98, and followed that through to about 15 years of working for digital agencies. And that gave me a great exposure to just staying on top of what was coming down the pike, back when SEO was a thing and paid search became very popular, but also, right around 2005, 6, 7, when social started to become a thing for marketers to think about. So 15 plus years of agency, just working with brands to help them figure out the marketing landscape. And then about 4 years ago, decided to make a shift and go technology side and kind of work on more of a product marketing focus. And I joined aWeber, which is an email marketing platform. And our focus is basically providing businesses, entrepreneurs, online businesses with an email marketing platform to help them get their messages to their customers and to their prospects.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And it's so funny you mentioned, kind of getting that start in church, which is kind of also how I got into marketing. And that's because I was annoyed at these ugly flyers that were made to hand out to the community.
Right.
So that kind of, it annoyed me. And I'm like, dude, this has to be better. Like, it has to be a better look to this. So that's how I got, into this world. So that's so funny. aWeber, I've been a fan of aWeber for a long time. Of course, aWeber, of course, joins that stage with a number of other platforms. What would you say makes aWeber a little bit different? I'm just curious. And then we'll delve into, some advice and some tips related to email marketing for the listeners.
Sure. And aWeber is a brand that's very popular within the online marketing community and businesses that promote their products and services online. But most people don't realize that aWeber has been around for 19 years. And our founder, Tom Colzer, actually built the first autoresponder software program. So And he built it to solve the challenge of keeping up with inbound sales requests that he was doing, part of the role he had at that time. So over 19 years, one of the benefits we have is we have a reputation with all the ISPs, internet service providers like Google and Yahoo and Comcast, et cetera. And that reputation allows us to have, strong deliverability of getting emails into inboxes. And then, part of our culture is focus on the customer, and our customer supports is one of the best in the business. We won awards a couple years straight just for outstanding support. And a lot of businesses, start with us and come back to us because of those two things. Couple that with, our product is just there to help, and it's able to do the simplest functions of sending out a newsletter at a specific time and day, all the way to more advanced things like segmenting based off of actions that somebody may take, whether signing up or inside of an email.
Gotcha. Now, I know when it comes to, email newsletters, email providers, and using email in our businesses, there's a lot of myths, and I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that that are there when it comes to working with someone like aWeber or whatever. Like, what are some of the myths that you find you have to debunk a lot of times, or that you would like to share and kind of uncover for us? Because I think that there are a lot of, again, misconceptions and myths out there about using an email service provider and what it can do for a business.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that's even as recently the last couple of weeks been in a lot of conversations with folks in the industry that were still coming up with these myths or just having the wrong impression of what the value of email is. I'd say the one of the more popular ones, and everyone probably sees this at year end, when businesses are writing trends for the upcoming year, but the fact that some folks, consider email to be dead. I mean, email is very much alive and very much popular or becoming more popular with retailers or even any online business that's able to get a business off the ground. So, the notion of email being dead, I think every year someone, will mention it, but someone will debunk it by just the stats of growing adoption and the stats of businesses realizing that it's the workhorse, it's the ROI generator for their business that has often gone unused or underutilized in most businesses. So, number one myth is email is not, well, the number one myth is email is dead. And the answer is, or the rebuttal to that is actually very much alive.
Yeah, it's so funny because we hear that a lot of times, all these things that are mediums that are dead,
Yeah.
Like some people are saying that print is dead when it's really not. So it's
Yeah.
I think that I think it's more so about the how it's used. I think it's what makes it come alive. If you're just using it just in an ineffective way, or just sending things out to send it out, or you're just annoying people, then it's not going to work for you. But I think if used in the correct manner, it can be very, very impactful, and you would have a different perspective and viewpoint, right, of how email is if it is truly alive, which it is for those who are using it correctly.
And that's a great point, because I think another myth, coming off of that is, email is just about sending messages to customers, and the reality is that successful email marketing starts way before you even hit the button send. Or even think of crafting an email. I mean, email, much like any other marketing channel, starts with, a solid strategy, a solid plan, and understanding who you're sending to and what you plan to do after you collect that email address. So, great email marketers will, spend time up front to think about, what am I going to be doing? What value am I providing? Do I have all the right content ready before they think about either starting to grow a list, or before they decide to get more aggressive in, sending more often or sending to different segments?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say another myth, I think, when it comes to, which I hear all the time is, well, how do I know it's not going to go into spam? And that whole aspect of email, that's such a, especially with Gmail and how they started to segment things out. Well, first of all, how do you debug that? Because not everything goes to spam. But and then also, how can they avoid emails that are sometimes going to spam?
Yeah, I mean, the whole conversation of spam, which is becoming a more popular conversation with businesses. We see that businesses that are getting started have that concern, but also businesses that have been sending successfully for months and years will fall into this. Why is my email all of a sudden going into spam? And the reality is, every day, I think there's some stats recently shared. Every day there's over 200 billion emails being sent. So if you think about it, spam isn't necessarily just going to be something that is using, words like free and, using what we typically think of as spammy content. The real definition of spam is anything that's not relevant to the end user. So if you think about 200 billion emails being sent, there's a good chance that you as the consumer, and we all know this from looking at our Gmail inboxes or whatever inbox we have, there's a lot of email coming in there that if you think about the definition of not relevant to me or not relevant right now, that's a good percentage of those emails that can be considered spam. So, in terms of how to avoid the spam folder, so if you're sending, you want to make sure you don't end up in that spam folder. A philosophy we have here at aWeber, and a lot of ESPs or others will kind of touch on some of these subjects, but there are really four main pillars that a marketer needs to consider when it comes to avoiding or putting themselves in the best position to avoid spam. I'd say closely behind spam is, ended up in that dreaded promotions tab in Gmail, especially if you're somebody who, has relevant information, but, they hear from their subscribers that I never saw it or it ended up in promotions tab. So the four pillars to think about is, there's first the marketer, right? So the marketer's got to be thinking ahead, having a sound strategy. It's on the marketer and the brand to be prepared to send relevant information. The second pillar is the ESP, the email service provider. So who do you select? What are their best practices? Do they follow best practices? So in selecting an ESP, that's the other pillar that comes into play. And the third is the ISP, as I mentioned before, the internet service provider. So the Googles, the Yahoos, et cetera, they have a pretty big part in this deliverability, but they're not the sole piece of it. And that's why there's four pillars to focus on. And then the fourth pillar is the subscriber. And when you think about the subscriber being part of this, is how successful are you as a marketer to set the expectation, deliver value, get engagement. That subscriber's got to be somebody who's wanting to find your email. So how well you do as a marketer to condition your subscriber is also a part of avoiding that spam folder. So when you think about these four pillars, there's probably two or three that you can control as a marketer, and then there's one that you really can't control, and that would be the ISP. And the ISPs operate. It's funny, I was having a conversation with somebody recently about how, the world of email when it comes to deliverability is similar to the world of SEO and, Google's factors for ranking. We know there are factors to help, get it in position one, but there's no clear cut, do these 10 things and you're in. Similar for email, we know there are good signals and bad signals that Gmail will look at. As long as you're doing that as a marketer and you can control that. But again, it's not a perfect science where it's, where it's like do these 10 things and you're guaranteed to get into the inbox. So when you look at that context, it really, puts you into a perspective of, am I doing the right thing as a marketer? Am I considerate and being considerate of these four pillars? And if you follow best practices within each, then you're putting yourself in the best chance to get into that folder, but also getting engagement from your subscriber.
Definitely. And I find it really interesting what you said about how the deliverability is similar to, Google and SEO and how things are found. I think in a lot of times, as business owners that use email, it's important that we are aware of how the platforms that we're using, that we're playing nicely with their rules, like Google, right. Their main objective or their mission is to provide the most relevant information to the search, to people who are using their platform. and you have to, kind of, essentially put your methods, your messages, if you will, in line with what they believe is, is going to work for their business. I mean, Google is a business, right? So
Right.
I think it's important that we are playing with those rules and aligning ourselves so that way we can, work best with them.
And that's a great point. And translating that to the email world, think about Gmail. That's why when it comes to these four pillars, you, the marketer, which ESP you select is critical. And knowing that, there's a lot of choice out there when it comes to your ESP, but if your ESP doesn't have a strong reputation or doesn't own their own tech stack, so to speak, as it relates to getting, having the pipes directly into Google, because most people don't understand that there are some ESPs that actually rent equipment, if you will, that has the pipe into Gmail. So if you think about it, it's like you're outsourcing the most critical part of your business. And, marketers sometimes, don't know to ask that other ESP. But that would be a huge takeaway for anyone listening to this podcast is whichever ESP you're using, understand if they own or rent the technology or equipment that gets emails delivered to inboxes. Because that's a big deal when something goes down. You want to be in control and be able to acknowledge it and fix it quickly versus, somebody's waiting for somebody else who's waiting for somebody else. Which at the end of the day, how does Gmail feel about that? So that's just something to keep in mind, for the long game when it comes to successful email.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, some of the other things that come up when I consider, emails and best practice, some of the myths as well. One of them is that there's, in particular, some day that works the best to send email.
Yes.
Tuesdays are the best. Thursdays are the best.
Yep. And I think every time I'm asked that question, when somebody says, "Hey, what's the best day to send email?" I say yes. Yes, meaning it could be Sunday, it could be Saturday, and
right.
Unfortunately, there isn't a good answer to give. And if you even Google that best day to send email, you'll see various studies. I think the majority of them will tell you that it really depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish and who it is you're trying to reach. Something up to that point is, for audiences that have something to provide or something that's valuable before somebody starts their work week, sending on Sundays at 2:00 might be beneficial for them. But, to a retailer, is that really, that may seem counterintuitive, but you never know unless you're testing. And that's why the answer is always elusive of being, it depends. And, it really could be the weekend. When you think about that spam and the volume of email, you may have a more attentive audience, if it's somebody who's getting ready for work on Monday and wants to kind of download, get prepared on a Sunday afternoon. That could be an advantageous time to test to see if you get a better engagement rate.
Yeah, that is so true. And we can't always predict how people are going to respond to what they do, but you never know really until you put something out and you kind of drive some tests for yourself, also to see what works and what resonates with that objective and who you're trying to reach. So that absolutely makes sense, which then brings me to another myth, if you will, which is the whole unsubscribe. To have unsubscribed is bad, and
yeah.
It's not necessarily bad, right? To have someone to see that you have, some that are unsubscribing could actually be a good thing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, and you hit the nail on the head, like considering and thinking about the context of unsubscribing being a good thing. One of the myths is, I'm a business. I need to grow my list, and a lot of businesses fall into that, quantity over quality. And I think one way to respond to that is quality is first, quantity will follow. Is one way to think about it. And the way to ensure quality is making sure that you're only sending the people that want to be there. And a tactic or something that businesses should consider is, or ask themselves, when's the last time we sent an email to our list? And it could be 50 people, could be 500,000 people. When's the last time we sent them an email and asked them, do you still want to get this information? Is this information still valuable to you? If not, click here. And if not, and they're not interested anymore, then they've self-selected out. And what that has done is basically increased, the quality of your list, so that when you send your next email, it's going to people that have had a chance to opt out but did not, and therefore your opens and your clicks should be stronger. And then the other thing about unsubscribes that people need to consider and marketers need to consider is, an unsubscribe should not be seen as a bad thing, because an unsubscribe is actually better for you than if somebody were to hit a spam complaint. The spam button is one of the worst signals that you can send to a Gmail or an Outlook or a Hotmail, because that person is basically saying, rid the universe of this marketer because, it's not relevant to me and I want them gone. You don't want to end up having that happen to you. So that's why getting unsubscribed, giving your list a chance to unsubscribe, frequently doing that, 2, 3, 4 times a year, depending on your volume and how frequently you're sending, is definitely something that should be considered and should be embraced.
Absolutely. Now, one other myth that comes to mind is the length of an email. I get emails with different links, and, sometimes I read all of them, so, like it's in its entirety. Sometimes I skim, sometimes it's better that it's a short one, but I'm sure that also is relative to the objective, the goal, who the audience is. Is the email, too long? Can it be too short? What are your thoughts or that myth about emails should be short? Can they be long? Yeah,
and the answer, similar to the time of day or day of week, the answer is yes. It could be all of those, but you hit the nail on the head when you said it's going to be depending on the context of your audience in terms of what are they expecting. Knowing that right now over 60% of emails are open on mobile, let's assume that you have a mobile-centric audience who's going to be reading your emails on mobile. Well, if that's the case, then is a long storytelling email the most applicable for that audience? Or is it, it's not just the length of the email, it's also what's in the email in terms of should it be just text with some links, or should it be image heavy with featuring your latest grand opening store or your latest product selection or something like that? And again, the answer could be both. Both could be relevant depending on who you're sending to. So I guess one thing to think about when it comes to length of email, I've read some pretty long emails because they were written pretty effectively and they were relevant to me for the context that I was consuming it in. But if you think about when you start sending emails, the sequence of a series when someone joins your list, if you think about it, when you first meet somebody, just think back to basics of relationship building. When is it in a relationship that you say the most? Is it at the beginning? Is it after they start to learn more about who you are? And if you start to follow that, if you're starting from scratch or you want to test something, that might be a way to introduce longer form text towards the beginning of the relationship, because that's when people probably are more thirsty for knowledge about you, your product, your service. But on the flip side, I've seen very, very successful emails that are, 4 sentences, with a sign off and maybe one link in the email. So it really does come back to what is your audience expecting? What expectation did you set for them?
Absolutely. I think it's just about being in tune with the audience, knowing what it is that they want and giving it to them in a way that's most applicable for them, makes sense for, just knowing who your audience is. I think it kind of goes back to that. So
good.
No, sure. Go. It's all you.
I was going to say, and knowing more about your audience, and that reminds me of another, myth or solution to myths, which is just simply asking, how many times have you got that email from a brand that you like or that you signed up for, where it's would you rate us? How would you recommend us to a friend of yours? How likely are you to recommend us to a friend of yours? And it's 1 click and you're done, or 2 clicks and you're done. But it's getting that information and just asking simple questions of your audience helps you determine, is a longer form email better? Is a shorter form email better? So if you're building a list of things to do, with your email list after today, listening to this podcast, the other question you're asking yourself is, when's the last time I asked my audience or my list relevant questions to help me figure out what to do with our content?
Absolutely. Getting it right from them. It's easy, and it's so powerful too. And it makes what we're doing that much more effective when we know who we're talking to and what it is that they really care about,
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears here a little bit, and I want to be mindful of your time. So we'll wrap up with this, just a couple more questions, and then we'll let the listeners and let you go. So one is very interesting. Where do you see email evolving, let's say, in the next 5 years? What do you think it's going to look like at that point?
Yeah, that's an interesting question that part of me feels like nothing will change in 5 years, just because, when I say nothing will change, I don't mean absolutely nothing. I just mean we'll still be using it the same way we are today. Now, that's one part of me feeling that way, but the other part of me thinks, look at the last 5 years. So you go 5 years back from today and what was happening or what has happened in the last 5 years. And things like, automation becomes more prominent, and features and functions that, big brands were using are now accessible to the startup and to the small business marketer, things like automation and sending triggered messages. So when that becomes more accessible to more people, it's now a matter of, okay, where do we go from there? So, you start thinking about the features and functions kind of cascading down to to all businesses or all marketers. I think there's a personalization focus, because again, if it's about building relationships in the inbox and sending relevancy, how can you be more relevant? So being more relevant within emails is something that will be happening in the next 5 years. It's just a matter of how much more relevant can you be. We've all gotten the email of, personalization is good at this point of, first name, last name, or referencing your name somewhere in the email. But there's also emails we're getting now of, previous purchases, and if you like this, think about this. But how can it get even more, I guess, micro-personalized because of all the information that's being collected? So I'd like to think that more personalization or deeper personalization is something that will happen in the next 5 years. And then I think about the actual email themselves, and the interactivity inside of the email is something we'll probably see evolve a little bit more. And whether that's, think about chatbots or just the interface of a chat, or things that are more engaging inside of an email. It's how do you take almost like micro content inside of an email so that no one has to leave or click away from that email, and finding ways to advance that. Again, knowing that email is never going to go away, is how do you make that experience more engaging inside of the email versus, taking somebody off to another experience or breaking that experience up.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Being mindful of the journey, not wanting to take them somewhere that you don't want them to go. And even if it is relevant to a relevant landing page, it's still a click. If a click is seen as a barrier in 5 years, that's a good and bad thing. But if you can accomplish the action inside of the email itself, I think that's even more powerful. Absolutely. So, Erik, I'm so appreciative of you being here and spending some time with me today. So as we wrap up here, any last words of advice, and then, also let us know where people can reach you, or if there's other information that you would like to share that would be relevant to what we talked about today, feel free to share that with us as well.
Yeah, I guess, parting thoughts are basically, two of the most critical things to think about for anyone out there who has an email list or thinking of building an email list is, just really understand, this notion of deliverability. Just really understand who it is that you're partnering with, and, do some due diligence before, deciding to put or build your list, or, quite frankly, put your, business into the hands of an ESP. Just do your due diligence and what to ask them. And I can share some information for the show notes, just kind of questions you should be asking your ESPs. And then the other one, which again ties with providing relevant information or increasing your chances to get into that inbox, is think about list hygiene I mentioned some of the things you can be doing in terms of sending an email to ask if your list still wants to receive your valuable information. But just think about ways that you can make sure that who you're sending to is who you should be sending to, and who you're sending to is somebody who wants to get the information tied to the expectation that you set. And to learn more about aWeber, you just go to aWeber.com. If you want to follow me, let's connect. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Harbison. That's Erik with a K. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn and connect there. And also, what I can do, Parshell, is send some links to some other guides, free guides we have for anyone who's looking for that new strategy or that fresh idea, or anyone who's getting started. I can send along some of our educational content, free to consume.
Awesome. Thank you. That would be perfect. You guys, you'll be able to get those links in the show notes on this particular episode, right below here. So this has been great, Erik. I really, really appreciate you being with me today.
My pleasure, Parshell. Always great to talk about email. Always great to, again, like you said in the intro, love to educate, love to teach, love to share my knowledge and my experience any way I can to help marketers connect better with their customers.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much. This was a great conversation. All right, you guys, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, remember, a good boss is a good leader. Go out there and serve our gifts to the world because you're the boss.
Thanks so much for listening to the Marketing Boss Podcast with your host, video marketing expert, Parshell Houghton. We'll catch you next time.